National Fire Radio.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to an episode of The Size Up by National Fire Radio, where what you do off the job matters. And this show is there's going to be a lot. I feel like there's going to be a lot of laughs in this show when we really get into my guest today and what he does off the job that matters. And it matters to him, and it matters to a whole bunch of people, and it's pretty cool when it comes down to it. And I think this is one of the things that I say this a lot in the intros and the outros and even during the show, but I love hosting this show and meeting new folks, aside from meeting them on social media or meeting them because they actually hosted a podcast I was on once a while ago. But it's things like this that it just makes it fun, right? And these are the fun parts, and this is really what I enjoy doing off the job, is talking to folks and meeting folks. And I keep saying, like, what you do off the job matters. And today is a release day for the show, for an episode that came out. And since the release a few hours ago, my phone has just been blowing up with kind of compliments about my guest and what they have going on. And it's such a cool thing to know that this matters. What I'm doing matters still. And I don't know, it's like one of these circle things that somehow I'm going to talk about, probably with Jeremy soon or then later. But beyond babbling about myself, John, how are you today? Let's get to the guest. Let's go.
Brother, I'm doing great. It's kind of a low-key day before I go back to work, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being excited to be here. And I love these low-key days, right? Because so today, I'll call today a low-key day for me. I'm recording with you this morning. Sometimes I stack recordings like 2 and 3 in a day. And that should be a low-key day, but it's just super high stress because I think to myself, all right, this first one we're doing in the morning, my last one is usually later in the afternoon. Am I going to be the same host 2 episodes later on the same day that I am in the morning? So I put that stress on myself. Where today, where there's only one, I'm like, we could do this. We could knock this one out. It's a great way to start the morning, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess in that instance, I like you kind of alluded to, I hosted a podcast, and we did 2 in one day, and one episode we recorded for 4 hours.
Oh my God.
We had to break it up. Yeah, it was a cool episode, and it was just with one guest, and I had to break it up into two different episodes, and that was stress. But as our awesome buddy Ted would say, just be a goldfish. 10 seconds.
10-second memory, right? It's just so easy when you equate the world to who's sitting right behind my Barbie doll, my Ted Lasso Barbie doll that's right behind my shoulder at all times. One of my favorite Christmas gifts that I've ever received from my family is my Ted Lasso Barbie doll, which is a weird thing to say too. But you think about that, right? And when we think about doing this and you hosting the show and how you're doing this, it's so much fun. And I could definitely talk to my guest for 4 hours. I could let this thing roll, and we could just keep going and going and going. And it makes me wonder, like, how long could I do this for with a guest, and how long would people want to listen? That's the other end of it too, right? I feel like when I do them for an hour, that's like that magic number that people are done with myself and whoever I'm interviewing at that point.
Yeah. I mean, that's the trick, is finding that sweet spot where people's attention spans kind of like, all right, I'm done with this. Nope, I'm done. But with your podcast and National Fire Radio, I have a 23-minute drive to work. So I split them up. I stop when I get to work, kind of before I walk into work, I kind of put a little music on and get ready for the day, because we never know what our job's going to give us for the day. And then on the way home, I just chill, sit in my truck for about 2 minutes while, whatever New England hits us for weather, let my truck warm up or let the AC kick on. And then I just drive home listening to either you or Jeremy. So it all depends.
So we appreciate your listening. I'm so sorry.
Dude, it's kind of like just something chill. And it's like, okay, I just worked 24 hours with 4 other dudes, and luckily enough on my shift, our personalities kind of mesh, and but at the same time, it's like, I'm exhausted because I work in an entirely different realm of firefighting than residential. So, um,
So I want to get into that for sure, but you mentioned something, and I've said this too. So I use my 30-minute commute for podcasts most of the time. But it's interesting that you mentioned this because so I drive on the New Jersey Turnpike, exit 7A to exit 9 when I go to work, and that's like my podcast time. When I get off exit 9 and fight the toll plaza traffic, which sometimes is there, sometimes is not, because why would someone want an easy pass where you could just drive through the toll plaza and not stop? But whatever, that's a whole different debacle, right? But when I get into the city that I work in, when I get on the highway, I'm usually switching the podcast over to a song or a playlist just because I feel like I want that little bit of extra music time, but right before I get out of the car for work, and sometimes if the podcast is really like they're really getting into something with the guest, I don't do that. But it's just weird that you said how you listen to that song. I kind of do the same thing where I want a song, whether it be my wedding song from Metallica, whether it be a ska song, a punk song, a rap song, like it's just how I feel that day, whatever I feel to pick. And I almost feel like I need that to go to work.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you kind of need that, besides the caffeine that we all drink, you kind of need that little, I guess, I mean, I call it the get your ass in gear song,
Sure.
And for me, it's the same thing. It's starting to become summertime, here in the Northeast, and, it's starting to become reggae, ska, I'll throw in a little, social distortion if I'm, feeling kind of, I need an extra, or Metallica, or you name it. I mean, the other morning, was it Sunday morning? I literally just got in the truck and just put Slipknot on, and I just vibed all the way to work. And I'm like, all right, it's Sunday. Nothing's really going on in the yard, so, and I just like kind of just checked out, kind of go driving to work.
It's interesting because music means a lot to me, even though I'm not a musician. My boys both are, which is crazy to me that they have this great, amazing musical talent that my wife and I have no clue about. But music has always been an important part of my life. And on my way home from work, depending on how the shift went, sometimes I'll continue the podcast. Sometimes I'll be like, I need acoustic, cover songs for my ride home because last night was just horrible. Or maybe last night was good and I just want to chill. And that's always been a thing. But recently, a thing that I've been doing more and more of, and another captain that worked on the car, I followed him, and he had music playing in the office on the TV. And it was like, I don't know, 60s, 70s soul. And I'm sitting in the office that morning getting all the stuff together, doing the paperwork for the day, and I'm like, I'm grooving to this. Some folks keep the news on all day. Now, I've been keeping one of those weird TV music channels on and even leaving it for the chief or the captain that's following me on the car. And I'll get a text like, 70s soul today, I dig it. Smooth jazz, like Sundays are for smooth jazz is what the joke is now for me. But it's such a big part of it, and it's this mental state that we need to be in, and it really helps me keep me there, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, you're an officer, and it's kind of hard. If you have come into work and you are in a, how can I put this, a shitty mood, that travels down to the guys on the floor, and that's kind of like with us. We start work at 6 a.m. and we go out, and depending on what the shift before us was listening to, if they're listening to 90s rap and the LT walks out, we're always like walking on eggshells, like, oh, what kind of music is he going to be into? And we like quickly go over to the XM and we change it to like, something chill. And, it's usually, we do okay with the 90s alternative. So, and then he starts singing along and it's like, okay, we're good. We're good today, guys.
But it's just another way, too, where you kind of know where everybody's at, right? By how the music is kind of sounding. And that mood to be in, like, I mean, I'm working tomorrow, too. I start my pre-work routine tonight almost of, and especially I'm on the car a lot more again because my chief was out with the surgery. But even when I'm not, I'm going in, we now have a lot of computerized systems, so I can go in and I can check the logs to see, what's happened with the truck or what's happened on the shift. That kind of sets me up for like, all right, now I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to wake up in the morning, see what changed, because it's always going to change no matter what. But it's that nice little pre-workout kind of thing, that pre-workout, good Lord, pre-work routine that I'm in that really works for me and helps set me up in that mental state that I don't think 20 and 30 years ago anybody was even thinking you needed to be in. They just walked into work and were like, what's up? We're here today. I could be wrong, but I don't feel like that.
20, 30 years ago, they were walking into the back door to the kitchen table and then like grabbing their coffee and, busting balls with the guys and from the shift before. And, and now it's like when I walk into work, the kitchen, the back door leads to a hallway. And then as you're walking into my firehouse, the kitchen and the kitchen table is on the left. So you walk in and you just look at everybody and they're all like on the TikTok and like, and it's just 2 or 3 guys. And then as my shift starts to filter in, everybody starts putting down their phones and just busting chops and drinking our coffees and, hey, how was the shift? What happened? But it's definitely different than it was when I got into the fire service.
Oh yeah, there's definitely that change that's there for sure. Especially now with the weather being nicer, it's so we're my firehouse is larger, 3 companies and a chief, depending, or 2 to 3 companies and a chief. A lot of folks floating around. So you'll have guys hanging out front with the doors open in the morning. You'll have guys in the kitchen hanging out, kind of just however you end up that day. I feel like that morning time, though, whether it's the start of your shift or the end of your shift, is still that no phone time. Almost, in a way, or less, let's call it less phone time, because I don't care. I mean, right now, I even told you, look, I'm going to be probably looking at my phone just because things are coming in and there's things that are happening. I think when we talk about the phone type issue is, listen, everybody's going to be on it. It's your ability to disconnect from it, to want to be with the people that are around you. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle for me, and I want to be with the guys I work with. But yeah, you have to want that, right? And that's something very different from pre-phone days.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like I'm like this weird in-between generation where a lot of the guys from like the 70s and 80s and then today, I'm like stuck in the middle of the new old school, as I like to call it. And, I'm like, oh man, I will have no problem, running into a burning building with a long coat and hip boots and a leather helmet. That's it. It's all I need. But that's our joke around the station is we would be gladly to do that again. But at the same time, we know fires are getting hotter, especially where I work. It's extremely hot, clean burning, if you would say. But but yeah, it's just different work. Going from a volunteer where I started to being in my 30s, starting my fire service career finally. I busted some serious ass getting to where I am, and which will lead into what we're going to talk about, later. I kind of have to balance my two passions, but also what brings in the paycheck and what puts food on the table and pays the bills compared to, I'm just going to go out and have fun. But it's risk versus reward for me a lot of times. And,
Oh, sure. And that's something too that nobody really ever wants to kind of talk about in this because, we talk about the passion for the job and the history and this, that. But guess what? It also puts food on my family's table and allows me to live in the house I live in and is a career that I love and I put everything into. But it's the reason I'm there. It's not just because I love the job. It's because it's how we provide, I mean, my wife has a great career too, and that's awesome, but we need this job. I need this job just as much as anyone else does. And I think it's something that you kind of have to ride that line of where you're at with it. And I understand there are a lot of volunteer firefighters out there, and then they make up more than career firefighters in America. But it's amazing to be able to do something you love and then get paid for it on top of that and allow that to provide for your family. And that, to me, is a reason I appreciate the job. My time there even more is like, we get to get paid to do this.
You mean you give me a paycheck for acting like a little kid for 24 hours? All right, I'm in.
Right? Like in that way, you're like, oh my God, they actually pay you. Like every 2 weeks, the check is still there. And I'm like, holy cow. I was just talking to, so the senior man on my shift works in the same house as me. And the other day we still get paper checks. I know a lot of people don't do that. It's direct deposit, but they still give you instead of emailing, you still get that. Yeah. So he came in the office, he handed me mine, I handed him his, and we were opening them. And I'm like, man, you remember, he's a couple more years on than me. I'm like, remember when you were a rookie and you opened it and you were so excited at the money that was there? And now, obviously, in the latter end of our career, we're both making more. I'm like, I'm still excited when I see the money that's there. I just don't understand how I made it when I was making that much as opposed to what I'm making now. And it's never enough.
Yep. But yeah.
It's that realization, right, of that. Like,
yeah. The first day I walked into the firehouse that I'm working in now, and I work in a shipyard. I'm a shipyard firefighter.
Okay.
And and that's all we do. We just handle ships. That's it. Ships, naval ships. And and we're a private entity. So yeah, the city is right up the street from us, but our main concern is we still say every house around our firehouse is our responsibility, because it still takes 5 minutes for the city to come down off the hill. And it's happened twice before I even came there that they fought a fire and had to deal with, what they call the city's problems, but it's still our problem. There's still a fire truck with our doors are open. That the people don't know that the shipyard has their own fire department. That's the biggest question I get. Uh-huh. Oh, that place has a fire department?
How big is your shipyard that you work in?
It's about 68 yards. No. It's pretty big. It takes up like 6 city blocks.
Okay.
On the water, obviously, because we launch ships.
You would hope it would be on the water,
right? But it's pretty big. It's it takes pretty much the second half of the street that continues on way into the city, and you could see it from Route 1 and Maine. If you're driving up Route 1, having a nice scenic drive, you see it. And first time I stepped in there for another job that I worked at, I was like, I want to work here. I want to work here. And it was my goal. Like, it was on the bottom tier of the departments. I shouldn't put it that way, but it was like, I never thought I would be where I'm at.
Sure.
But I would love to work here. And, I was working full time in another department, and it was a slow house. I mean, slow. And I came from a very busy place, very busy department, where we were out the door almost every hour, either with an ambulance call, a fire call. We were out the door constantly. And I was like, I need to change. Mentally, I need to change. I just can't sit here for 48 hours by myself. It was tough. So I said, screw it. And I submitted, got an interview, and got 2 interviews, phone and the in-person with the chief. And then I walked out of that interview. I was like, I didn't get that job. There's no way I got that job. And then later on that week, I got an email with the conditional job offer. I was like, oh, what? And luckily enough, my girlfriend was home too. And I go, you're never going to believe this. Is this real? Can you just read this for me? And she read it, and holy crap. It was like this is awesome. I finally got the department that I want to be on. And I went into my first day, and, one of the guys ended up getting hurt, within the first 2 hours of me being there. And I saw a bunch of personalities clash, and I'm just the new guy. First day, first 24-hour shift. And I'm like, this is going to be a long 20 years if this is how it's going to be every shift. And maybe a few hours later, the ambulance got backed into a cement pillar. And within my first 8 hours of my shift, I got yelled at by my chief. And I was like, oh, man, you know what? Those 48 hours by myself don't seem so bad now. But, and this was about the same time I started watching Ted Lasso, and I just heard Ted's voice go, goldfish, just be a goldfish. And I'm like, okay, I got this. And it's, you know,
it's those things that happen, right? Where some are out of your control, some maybe you can control, and you don't necessarily control them the right way. But that's also part of why we kind of do this job and this lifestyle that, again, it's not the most glamorous, especially when you're the one kind of taking the licking for what you did, which we've all probably had. There's no way you haven't done that in your career or something.
I wasn't even driving the ambulance.
And you still have to take the licking. I've been there as well. Never fear. One day we were parked, and I somehow still had to take the licking. Kind of like, I don't know what you were talking about. We were parked, and that person was a very bad driver. But okay. But you think about those things, and when you think about shipboard firefighting, it's definitely something I have never even remotely thought about until recently, because we lost 2 firefighters in New Jersey on a shipboard fire, and it just puts it more into that perspective that it's something you don't think about happening, but there's folks like you out there that are dealing with this all the time, or are prepared to deal with this all the time. And just the other day, actually, in Jersey, we had not a fire aboard a ship, but the crane that loads the ship went up and put a column in the air that, like, all the internet was blowing up, like, oh my God, what is on fire? But it was the crane. So you have to deal with those as well, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And, you know, we also have to deal with, how are we going to get the crane operator out of that if he has a medical emergency?
Yeah,
that's the other thing that
rope rescue operation that anyone who's in a city or anywhere that's building up and has cranes all the time should be on your priority of what you're going to do and have that plan.
Yep. So there's a bunch of things that we train on constantly, and it's kind of like you're beating a dead horse after the third time, but you constantly got to be ready for that emergency. And, you know, we just recently went through active shooter training. That's another thing that we hammer down on, because, you know, you think of a shipyard that deals with the Navy, it's gated, and it's just like 10,000 people just jammed into it. And
sure,
you know, it's, you know, and that's,
it's these thoughts that 30 years ago, not everybody, I mean, it wasn't even on your radar necessarily for active shooter training as much as it is today, where it's become a part of all of our careers. You know, it's become a part of our daily lives, where Stop the Bleed campaigns are getting taught to kids in school and teachers in school, but it's because they're working and because we can save more lives this way. Yep. And it's these things I never thought I'd be learning, you know, when I got like pressure bandaging and even tourniquets. When I became an EMT, it was like a tourniquet was, you never put on a tourniquet. Like, you cannot do this. Like, there's very few things I remember about my EMT class, the initial. I remember that as being like, you're never going to do this. And now it's like, tourniquet for you. I got 3 in my car and 1 in my other bag. And
yep. And my girlfriend's a school teacher. And so back when, I don't even know which one, but, you know, it kind of gave me a different mindset.
Sure.
And I talked to her about this. I go, you know, when I go to work, it's okay to worry about me. You know, I'm a firefighter. That's what I do. I run into danger. But you're a school teacher, and I shouldn't have that same worry on if the inevitable will happen.
Yep.
You know, so I made her own Stop the Bleed kit, and she actually carries it with her. There's 2 tourniquets. It's gonna be funny to say, but I also packed 5 tampons, because you can plug holes.
Yeah,
you know,
they work.
If it's good enough for the military, it's good enough for the civilians. And she's like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. I'm not good in pressure situations. I'm like, you're going to be okay. Just if anything ever happens, just remember what I taught you. Put that tourniquet on high and tight. You have 4 places to put it, you know, and use the tampons. You know how to use a tampon? Cool. Just slide it into the bullet hole and slide it out, and everything's going to be okay until we get there.
And it's these things that you never thought you'd be telling folks, but listen, being prepared is not a bad thing, right?
No.
And it's almost like we say a lot, like it's not the if, it's the when. And in her circumstance, it's probably not that. But for us, it's the same as for you, on a shipyard. I'm sure you guys are also training in confined space because that was a whole different thing, and compartmentalization of fires in ships, a whole thing I never even crossed my mind. Again, we the
Yeah.
chances of us dealing with a ship fire are very slim. We would have to go really far to do that. It is possible, but even now, that after what happened in New Jersey, I think we all have a more heightened awareness of a situation we didn't think could occur, but how we're going to prepare for it, and what could occur in one of those situations.
Yep. So the three things that we train on: hose deployment and confined space, and I don't even know why we do hazmat, because the yard has their own hazmat team, but we still train on it because whoever, whatever happens, you get, 10,000 gallons of diesel fuel in the river. That it's a little bit bigger than just for three guys to handle.
Yeah, definitely, you need more help, and even that though. But like you said, again, we don't do hazmat. We do primary response, and we called out the county team. We still train on it because our primary response, although it may be like, hey, let's get really far away and open the ERG and call more people, that is just as important as anything else because you're setting up that area, that containment. If you could get some booming down, maybe you stop 1,000 gallons, but hey, that's 1,000 gallons you were able to stop, or prevent it from going another 100 feet. So whatever you can do for that is a positive.
Yep. And, and our ships are 513 feet long. So who knows,
Yeah.
and, you go in, you could have a fire in the engine compartment and you walk onto the flight deck and you got smoke pouring out of the back door of the flight deck. And it's like, oh shit, where are we going? And, it's just a different mindset. And I get excited every time I go to work. I'm like, ooh, what's this going to bring? Is today's the day we get a fire? Because you don't want a fire. We've had a fire since I've been on, but, it was the one day that I took off on my shift and we got a fire. But, I would rather be there and experience my first fire, but I kind of liked where I was at. I was at a concert and I get, text my LTs like, you missed a good one, buddy. And I'm like, all right. So, all right, is in this moment coming on now so I can feel better about myself?
It's definitely one of those things as firefighters, like, we always want to do our job, right? But we never want to see, people lose anything. And
Right.
we just had a fire in my last shift. It was very small, but, there was a residence involved. There was a business involved. There's a lot of things. And the goal was to do the least amount of damage possible while we were trying to figure this out. And there was plan A, B, C, D. We just kept going through it to keep trying to mitigate that. And everyone did really well. And the business was actually able to reopen the following day, from what I understand. I haven't been back to work. But there's those things that again, the public doesn't necessarily always see. Is they just see the firefighters and what they're doing. They don't see our ability to mitigate that. And I think it'd be the same with a ship, where if you have a fire or an incident on a ship, that ship has to keep moving. So you have to be able to keep it to where it is and contained as much as possible.
Yeah. And when you think about it, so you have not only the fire to worry about and getting water on the fire quickly because it's a steel can and the heat's going to get you, but you also have to worry, and this is where, we do a lot of fire drills for the ships. And, as I'm watching one day, I'm like, all right, you think everybody's off. Then all of a sudden you see 10 more people come off. I'm like, that's going to be a problem if this ship ever catches on fire. And so my mindset goes, okay, I'm not really worried about the water because I am, but I'm like, we got to make sure that the people are off first, because that could spiral into many different things. Like, okay, is everybody accounted for? Where is everybody? Where was this person last? What compartment? And it's just, that's where my mind goes. My mind goes to the worst possible scenario. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to prepare for this?
Well,
But
that's that mindset again, right? Of like, sure, you're always preparing for the worst possible scenario. You know, how many people are in there? How many people could be in there? How is this going to go? And I think that, again, speaks to that mindset you start your shift with, right? Like that you're in the correct mindset for what could happen today, you know, and it could be anything. And the second the tones drop, you have to kind of switch gears into that. And I think that's also part of the reason why doing things like this, talking to different people, I mean, talking to you even about shipboard firefighting for this little bit has me thinking of 8 million different scenarios that I'm probably never going to see, but they still run through my head. And tomorrow at work, I'll probably be like, yo, I talked to a dude, he's a shipboard firefighter. He told me some stuff. And just sharing that alone, you know, and that metal end of it. And it's really interesting because this fire we had to do with a commercial kitchen, and there was the metal flashing, and it's like, use the camera. Dude, it's a commercial kitchen. Everything is hot.
exactly.
Right? Like literally you put the camera where the fire ended up finally when we found it was, you just had to keep opening up because, oh, did you use the camera? I'm like, yeah, it's all hot. It's all 150 degrees because this is a kitchen and it's normally 150 degrees in here.
Yeah, and that's the different thing. Being the new guy on my shift, it and having a fair amount of residential experience. I walk in every day like I don't know anything because I don't, and about this I don't know nothing about this, and I want to learn. So I constantly ask questions, and I'm like, okay. I even pick the Chief's brain every now and then when he comes out and out in the bay and sits down with us. I pick his brain all the time. I pick my lieutenant's brain all the time. I pick the senior man's brain all the time, and and that's the thing. I kind of went into this like, okay, I'm just going to sit back and learn and then do, and it's been working out for me.
I feel like there's no easy shipboard fire that I've kind of ever seen at least make it to the news. Like they had the one in the Navy ship in San Diego that was like 3 or 4 days of trying to put all that out, just in trying to cool everything and get to where the actual fire was, and slow burning, and again, just things you never really think about, like, or at least I don't think about. I'm sure you think about them way more, so it's always good to kind of bring that up. But really, we've spent this time talking about firefighting stuff, but the real reason you're here is to talk about what you do off the job, right?
Off the job.
And it's funny, I always say, like, I look down and I'm like, man, it's 7 minutes in, how are we going to keep talking about stuff? And now I look and I'm like, man, we're halfway done and we haven't even talked about what you do off the job. And that's where we're at. So we're jumping to that for a while because that's the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess it was through Truck Smucks was how I started following you. But all of a sudden I'm like, yo, is this dude, like, what's he got going on following your social media? I'm like, is this for real? And I finally just had to ask you. I'm like, bro, are you an amateur wrestler on the side? Like, how did you get into this? Are you a firefighter? Are you a wrestler? What's going on here? So let's hear it, man. How did you get into, am I using the right term, amateur wrestling scene, pro wrestling? I don't know. I don't want to be like, I'm not a pro wrestler or whatever it is.
So there are, I pro wrestler. They do. We do get money. Not much, but we do. But I kind of fell into it one day. I was on shift in another department in Southern Maine, and I had a partner who was just. I mean, I've always been a wrestling fan ever since I was a kid. I mean, who wasn't? Exactly. I'm wearing a DX shirt, and I remember getting a detention for wearing this exact shirt, not this shirt, but a shirt like it when I was smaller. And it's kind of funny how I fell into it. I kind of I was in a real weird mental state going through a divorce, and I kind of felt kind of depressed, and I'm like trying to figure out my new life, and like, okay, what's something that I couldn't have done before, and I kind of was like searching and watching wrestling. So I searched how to get into pro wrestling. And it kind of I found there's so many schools here in New England. So many great wrestlers came from New England. I mean, I mean, especially nowadays. I mean, one guy who came from New England's running the WWE now. With Triple
Triple
H.
H came from New
Triple H,
England.
he's from New Hampshire actually, and
Did not know that.
yeah. See, learn
Well,
something.
and I mean, they were based out of WWE is based out of Connecticut, right? I guess is where
Out
the
of
Hartford headquarters is.
Yep, in Hartford, I think. Yeah, Hartford, because you could see the building from I-95.
Yeah, I just knew that part. I knew I've driven
Yeah,
past it a few times because again, I grew up in the '80s of like, sure, every little kid wanted to be a pro wrestler. I mean, Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Superfly Snuka and the British Bulldogs. I could go when I talk about it, I can go back and just be like, I remember being a kid and like my my front steps were like the top turnbuckle, but if you stood on the railing, you were really on the top turnbuckle. I'm like, God, my parents just let us jump on each other from like 6, 7 feet in the air, and it probably wasn't smart, but we all survived. So
exactly. We all survived, and I kind of came into it during the "Don't try this at home" campaign. Where kids were doing the wrestling moves, and they're kids. They don't know how to do it, and and I kind of found a school, in Concord, New Hampshire. So it was a little bit of a drive for me from where I was living, and the head coach there, the head trainer, he trained with Killer Kowalski and Triple H, and and he had a short run in the WWE. So I was like, oh, cool, and like, all right, I know I'm never going to the WWE because I'm too old. That's weird when you look at me. It's like, wow, he's kind of young, but the people my age are already there. And you kind of look at it and like, oh, that person's that age, and you kind of look at their career and it's like, wow, when did they start? I am way behind the 8 ball if I want to do that. But I just wanted to get out there, do something physical with my, physically, and keep me physically fit for the job. And it's a good cardio workout, so I'm like, okay. And then I started falling more and more in love with it, and then I kind of had a little like personality conflict with all the coaches at the previous school, so I moved to another one that was kind of like, okay, we're gonna focus on this, this, and this, because you walk in there and it's like they have a game plan, but you don't know the game plan, and that's where it kind of like really messed with me because I am very methodical in how I learn. I also, how to learn things. So I need to do it slow, kind of like the crawl, walk, run method.
sure.
And then it came time to, okay, now you got to design a character, a gimmick. I'm like, how the hell am I going to do that? Everybody wanted me to do the firefighting thing because that's what I do. I have this killer mustache. They wanted me to design a gimmick around my mustache, my job. And I'm like, all right, you look back in the early 90s of the WCW, there was a firefighter character that flopped. I'm not doing that. I already do enough firefighting. I want to do something away from just 600 miles away from my job. So as you can see, there is a mask, tights, boots, and so I was like, okay. So I started going through all the wrestlers that I love. All right, Undertaker, and and Bray Wyatt and Rey Mysterio, and so Rey Mysterio is a masked wrestler. And he's really acrobatic. He's short, and he uses his size to his advantage. And he also gets that awesome pop from the fans because he's so small. I mean, you get him, 5'9", and you put him against a dude that's 6'5". What's the size disadvantage there?
I love that you called him small and he's 5'9", but okay, I understand.
On TV, I mean, you look at him, he's like, he's small, and that's what he's always been known for, his high agility and top rope antics, and I also sprinkled in some Jeff Hardy because that's the generation I grew up in. And so I designed a gimmick around my love of horror films and how can I be a high flyer and everything like that. And then when I got hired full-time as a firefighter, I had to put my wrestling stuff on a long time holding. I'm just finally getting back into it.
Sure.
And so that, that kind of messed with me. And then I started training again, and I came into work with a black eye. And I had to explain that to the guys on the crew.
Did they know prior that you had been doing wrestling? No,
Nope.
okay.
No, because I mean, in my mind, in our job, I didn't think it was going to be like a fanboy thing for them. I thought they were going to make fun of me because,
I'm
around
sure there's a bit of both.
many men in
I
tight.
think of a bit of both.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't want to deal with all this ball busting from the guys if they find out. And I didn't even know it it was like kind of red around my eye. And then one of the guys comes up and goes, "What'd you do this weekend?" "What are you talking about?" "I just had a few days off." "Why do you have a black eye?" Crap. Now I got to tell him. "I dabble in pro wrestling, guys."
I wear a mask and tights.
Yeah, I touch sweaty men in tights. What? We got to come into the kitchen. We got to call everybody so you can tell them.
I can imagine. I can foresee this occurring and just be like, this is it. But it sounds like too, though, again, there's going to be a fair share of ball busting about it. But my guess too would be like, this is the coolest thing ever, because in reality, I don't know. You're the only person I think I've ever met in my life, at least that has admitted to me that they do this on the side, even though there's loads of people that do it for real. And when you think about it as a little kid, and even with my boys, my boys never got into it as much as I did. And I guess it's just the way things are in society now. There's so many more things to see, like we lived for Monday Night Raw and Saturday night, whatever that one was. That's how old I am. It wasn't called the WWE when I was watching it. So,
is that a three-letter word that we can't talk about?
Yeah, legally. Well, I guess we can talk about it, but legally they can't say that anymore.
Yeah,
I didn't remember that lawsuit. But, when you think about it, it's cool and it's different. And like you said, it's so physical. And I remember I guess it was like late 90s, early 2000s. It was probably around when I was dispatching. MTV did a show where it was like, be the next WWE star.
Tough Enough.
Tough Enough. There you go. Yep. They brought in like 40 people. And I think after the first episode, they were down to 20. And it was because of those 40 people who thought they could do this. They just couldn't. They were ringing that bell left and right. And it was like, this is super. I don't even think up to that point I thought, I don't know. I just never thought how physical it could be and how mental it could be compared to watching that show. Yeah.
I mean, everybody, you hear the thing, "Oh, well, it's just fake." Well, it's not fake. I'm going to pull the curtain. I'm going to give the peek behind.
You're not pulling the curtain. Everybody knows.
Everybody already knows. With everything.
It's theater, right? It's physical theater, and it's a physical show. And again, my one son is really into theater, and you watch him work and practice. That's the same thing wrestlers have to do to put on that show, except you're putting your body on the line.
Yeah. And, I always joke because I wake up in the morning and I walk down the stairs to the kitchen at my house and my ankles crack, my knees crack. I even have to do a little shimmy to get my hips to crack because I'm so stiff. And, I tore hurt my shoulder on the job. And that kind of hinders me a little bit, and because I don't have the full range of motion anymore. And I always tell people I treated my body like an amusement park in my teens, and now I'm continuing to do it now, and I'm taking a little bit better care of my body. I do a little bit of yoga to keep me a little limber on, but it's a physical hobby for me. It's, and we did it. I remember one time we were, warming up, and we did the Tough Enough drill, which is you run the ropes 10 times and then you lift a boxing bag and slam it as much as you can 5 times and then do it all over again. See how many rounds you can do. And, all the guys around the ring were like, "Oh, he's got this. He's a firefighter. He could do this all day." No, well, I probably could have. And then I was like, this is my first day here. I don't want to show these guys up. So I stopped at 13 rounds. I could have done more easily. And, and yeah, actually, I think you may have saw it. I kind of just posted a thing of me and my tights and me holding my mask down with a sound clip from when Bray Wyatt came back, and it's the whole world in his hands. And one of my wrestling buddies was like, "No effing way! Is this for real? Are you really back? Are you really coming back?" And I'm like, "Yes, yes, I am." He's like, "Awesome! I loved your character." And and I'm like, "All right, I guess I'm bringing it out again." And
It's hard to stop doing something that you love, right?
it
And
really is.
when it comes to being a career firefighter, sometimes we do have to stop doing that, especially when you're newer in a department or starting your career. I mean, I remember when I got hired, I was snowboarding all the time prior to, and then I got hired and I was like, I should probably not snowboard and not do these stupid things that I've done because I just got this. And like you had said, you worked your ass off to get there, and then you're there and you don't want to have something happen that's going to prevent you from going there or prevent you from staying there. And it's a really important part that I like to always tell people that ask me about getting the job or coming on. It's like, look, you may have to give some stuff up. You can maybe start it again later in life. I thought I would start snowboarding again later in life. I just never did. I have not ever done it since then. And even my boys want to go, and we just haven't done it yet. But I gave that up. And like you said, you kind of stopped for a while until you were able to. And I'm sure it wasn't easy, but it was the right decision, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I still I still work out like I would. Still just prepping keeping my body going and stuff. And there's a documentary on Peacock. It's called The Undertaker's Last Ride, and I watched that and watched those 4 episodes, and watching Mark, have to give up wrestling because his body is not allowing him to do what he mentally wants to do. And you kind of have to do that when you come into the firefighting, either snowboarding, wrestling, anything that is potentially dangerous to your body. You kind of have to take that gut check moment, being like, how hard did I work to get to where I am in my career? And is it worth giving up because of fun? And so that was the main thing. And I had 2 concussions back to back. One from wrestling. Just I forgot to tuck my head, and my back of my head kind of hit the mat and hit the ring, and I saw stars, and I was like, oh shit, I know what that feeling is. And then 3 months later, I get a concussion on the job. Who would have thought firefighters get concussions? But we do. And I was
Especially when you just had one from another way, it makes you more susceptible to getting another one again.
Yep.
With the right scenarios, and those could occur.
Right. And luckily the day that I got the concussion fighting a fire, somebody was looking down on me because it was a defensive operation, and I just happened to put my mask on, and the nozzle came off and slammed me right here, and right between the eyes. And of course the adrenaline kicked in, and I just grabbed the nozzle and I kept fighting. And everybody around me was like, did that just happen? Did John just take a nozzle to the face and just grabbed the hose, muckled on, and just kept fighting? Yes, that's true.
It's when someone has to walk over and be like, you stop doing this now and come with me.
And of course the adrenaline was going, so I really didn't think of it. And then the adrenaline started to come down, and then my head started to hurt and everything. And I'm like, I don't feel so good. And
I'm sure too, though, it's the same as in a wrestling match where the adrenaline is going. And so it's not that it doesn't hurt, but the adrenaline, just like going to a fire, the adrenaline rush is covering all of that. And then post afterwards is when, oh man, now the pain is setting in, and this really hurts.
Yep. Yeah. It's usually the next day. The next day after training, it's like, oh,
It's such a weird comparison. I never thought I would be
Yeah.
making, because I talk about the adrenaline rush, with 555 for all those years. Listen, I'd be like, adrenaline's a mofo. It's gonna get anybody through anything. But when do the majority of our heart attacks happen? After the call is over, with that come down, and that's why being physically fit is important. Same as kind of in wrestling, I would imagine, where that physicality of it and being physically fit is so important, but your ability to control that adrenaline after. And we just watched the one wrestling documentary, folks. I think they were in Kentucky or Ohio, maybe. It was like an amateur wrestling.
Was it on Netflix?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So that, yeah.
And they were traveling around. But you see a lot of that afterwards, because you see the behind the stages, the things that growing up we never saw on WW.
Yeah, they kept it hidden.
What it was called then.
Yeah. Yeah, OVW. That's like one of the last like pioneer, wrestling stages. They actually guys from that get signed to the WWE that just need that little bit of tweaking of ring work. They send them to OVW. They send them over to Al, and and you need that crowd. You need that. It's kind of like drill school. You kind of need these smaller venues to get your teeth, your fingers wet.
It's the minor leagues. I mean, it's the same.
Actually, yeah.
Sports, we can compare it to theater. It's off Broadway. It's the minor leagues.
Yeah.
It's all these things together. It's just putting your body out there.
Yeah.
And like another thing that you said that really struck a chord with me, because I talk about this a lot at work and a little bit on the show, but is knowing when it's that time to leave, because your body shouldn't be doing this anymore. And I am getting into that sort of tail end of my career, and I talk about that, and people are like, bro, but you're in this amazing shape. You're Mr. Fitness. All these years you've been out here fitnessing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but my body's still, I don't know if my 51-year-old body is going to want to keep doing this. And I see that when you see a lot of these documentaries, and I just read an article, and I don't even know why I didn't think about bringing this up, but like that, I guess Stone Cold Steve Austin said he has like one more match in him or so. But when you see an older wrestler saying like, I just don't have it anymore, sure, I can come out for a little bit here, do an appearance, but it's that same thing, right? Knowing when your body's telling, even if you want to keep doing it, your body's like, you can't do this anymore.
Yeah. I mean, especially with Steve and Mark, their bodies are just, they physically can't do a 15-20 minute match anymore. They just can't. There's a lot of steel holding their bodies together because they put the business before their body way back in the day, and they just kept going. They would work 360 out of the 365 days. They didn't care. I mean, they cared so much about putting on that show, and now they're unfortunately they're paying for it now, and that's tough. When you see a guy, that spanned a 40-year career. Like, I always go to the Undertaker because I am a huge fan of him, but when you see that and you watch some of his later matches, you see him a little off, and it's like, that's not the old Undertaker. That's not the Undertaker I grew up with. But he would always tell people backstage, I'm going to go until the wheels fall off. Mark, the wheels have already fallen off. They're glued on at this point. But and that is the tough thing. And my grandfather, he was a firefighter for 60 years, and I think if he didn't get cancer and unfortunately passed away from cancer, that he would still be firefighting today. But he was getting to the tail end, and he just loved being around the guys. That was what brought him to the firehouse every day, was being around the guys. And I always
think it would be the same with the Undertaker too. Being around the guys, being around the crowd, being around that atmosphere is that firehouse atmosphere. I don't want to leave it. I love it. You know what I mean? It's been a huge part of my life now for 20 years in my department. Like, but preparing yourself to say this is going to happen definitely helps. I feel
Yeah.
at least I think. I can't speak to that because I haven't done it yet, and it's still going to be hard, and it's going to be rough to wake up and know that I'm never going to do that again. But I have to be prepared for it, and it's the same as kind of like in wrestling. I guess you have to be prepared to be like, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore.
And the other thing is from the creative aspect, you have to, again, just like the fire service. There's a lot of comparisons between the wrestling world and the fire service. You get the locker room is just like the kitchen table. They bust balls and everything, and wrestling's kind of helped me be a better fireman. Be able to have a little bit thicker skin and be able to bust somebody's balls, and be humble enough to be like, yeah, I screwed up, and own it and take the licking, and that's been the greatest thing for me. Is it's kept me humble, and I go through my life, I'm always that positive person. Like, you'll never know that I have a bad day unless I tell you. And just I just go through it like, okay, this is it. This is the big day. This is our WrestleMania. This is this is it. This is our show. Let's give the crowd what they want. And I still go to local shows just because I have friends. I have friends in the business, and when we get together, we kind of they come up to me in the crowd, and when they see me, because I'm kind of recognizable now with the mustache, and we still talk. And like and like I said, when I posted that thing on my Instagram story, and there it is. It's me and my tights holding my mask with a creepy background and a creepy song on it. And my phone blew up with all my friends, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is awesome! You're back, and it's gonna be great." And it's all right. Now I gotta get back into ring shape, because now I got ring rust, and which is a real thing. I don't even know how I'm going to handle the ropes again. And that's the other thing. Like with the work schedule, 24 on, 48 off, I gotta mentally get myself motivated to go to the ring.
Because again, too, and you don't want to be super sore leaving the ring, going to work the next day, not being able to perform. Right? I never would have thought we'd have so many layers in this conversation of how this could go, right? And the comparisons. But I see it, and I'm thinking, while you're talking, I'm thinking about these documentaries that I've watched, and I'm like, yeah, there are so many comparisons to this that are fairly spot on, that I'm surprised watch, after this comes out, there's going to be all these people being like, why didn't you interview me? I do this, and I'm a tag team member.
Right? And
there's probably, I wear this mask and I wear that mask. I'm be like, oh my God, they're inundating me with firefighter wrestlers.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, that's the greatest thing about your show is, like, you interview people from all different walks of life outside the firehouse or outside for being a first responder. And it's like, oh, cool. There's
yeah, and it's so interesting. Like, and I love the comparisons, man. And this has really been a fun chat here. We're getting into that hour mark too. So it's like,
I've been looking at my little clock too, and I'm like, oh, man, I could go on for hours and talk.
And we talked about that before the episode too, a little bit, like about going on. And it's like, I try and keep it to this, but I know there's so much more, and I'm excited about your kind of comeback, because now I'm like, cool. In like a year, see if you kept doing this or not, and have another whole episode of where it went. And people are probably going to want to be interested, because again, I'm sure there are folks out there that are like, I want to do this, and you just have to take that leap, right? You just have to go to the school and see if it works for you.
Exactly. And most wrestling schools, they do, your first class is free. See if you really like it, and if you don't, that's okay. You learn something. You do. There's little nuggets, and here's another layer between the comparison layer is, what's the one thing they always taught you at the first day of recruit school or recruit training? Carry a notebook, right?
Sure.
First day in wrestling, first day walking into the wrestling school, the coach handed me a notebook and a sticker to put on the front and write my name on it. Notebook. The notebook is universal. You got to have your notebook. And I would do the best I can, because I don't want to break my learning to go write something down. So I would mentally take a note and then remember later. And I've done a pretty good job. And
it's that history of it all too, right? That you can always flip back, and then you wonder too if like people like the Undertaker or Stone Cold have their notebooks. You know, they did the same thing, and imagine what theirs are just filled with of just events and things. You know,
tons of things, guaranteed. And just I get a lot of joy listening to the old school wrestlers talk about it. And the people that I've met just one being a fan of wrestling and then going to these local events, because they bring in a lot of the guys who could still semi do it for 5-10 minutes out of whack, and it's kind of cool. And I even just we get guest coaches that come in, and I've met a lot of them through the guys that were in the WWE back in the day, and they come in and be like, okay, here's what we're going to work on, and that's been kind of cool. And I've
don't even think about the amount of learning that goes on. Right? It's the same as firefighting, right? Like you're constantly learning.
It never
going to be better. Yep.
And
awesome, man. So where can everybody find you? Because before I do the 10, I like to kind of throw this out there in case somebody's like, I don't want to hear his 10 answers. So how can they follow you? Come watch you possibly wrestle sometime in the near future.
Yeah. So I kind of stick to the New England area, or at least that's my goal, is to stick to the New England area. Be a little weekend warrior when I can. That's do a show here and there on a Friday or a Saturday night. I'm sure you're going to post my social media and my Instagram handle, which is totally fine. If you have questions, hit me up there. I love getting people knowledge about it. And it's definitely one of those things that I don't mind talking about and answering any questions. But
because that's another thing too, like, right, if you want to get into this, you're a great resource to ask, because you have that firefighting connection, or for anyone, but really it's anything. You want to be a firefighter, what do? You find a firefighter and you ask. Like this is the time of the year where a lot of folks are reaching out to me and saying like, hey, my son or daughter is graduating high school and they think they want to be a firefighter, would you talk to them? Sure. The same as, hey, my son or daughter's, maybe happens a little less, wants to maybe get into wrestling. Do you want to talk? Would you talk to them? But it's one of those things, right? It's how you learn more about your craft.
Yep. Yeah.
Sweet. What is your wrestling name? I forgot to ask that question. It was on my list. I just looked down. Can you say it?
So in Spanish, it is El Muerto Lobo, which is the dead wolf. But I kind of like shrink it down a little bit, and I'll just go by the werewolf because it's easier for people to announce.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's kind of fun, and
that's it too. It's a whole different character. We just went to the Renaissance Fair this past weekend, and like the amount of characters there, I was like, wow, this is way more than I remember it being the last time we went to a Renaissance Fair type thing.
You know what? I wish it happened more up on the coast of Maine, LARPing. I just love, back when I lived in southern Maine, I go across drive past the city park, and there are people LARPing. I'm like, oh my God, that looks fun.
I've now said the word LARPing more times in the past 3 days than I think I have in the past 3 years. Because we were more amazed that the LARPing weapons they were selling at the Renaissance Fair were just as much as if I bought like a steel sword that made me like a real sword that like really could be a sword. The LARPing one's just as much money. I'm like, whoa, these folks are spending some cash out here.
Yeah.
But that's a podcast for another day.
Oh yeah.
Let's get into the size up 10, and then we'll do a whole nother podcast on LARPing one day, because I guess I can learn more about that from you too. So,
I have no idea.
There'll probably be some firefighter out there that's like, I need to be on this show because that dude doesn't do it. I do it every weekend.
There it is, right there. You just watch it.
Man, you ready for 10 questions that are supposed to go quick and never do?
Yeah, let's go.
Here we go. Beach or mountains?
Oh, beach.
Night out or night in?
Ooh, night out.
Oh, nice. See, most people go a night in, so I like it. Out there partying it up.
Social butterfly.
How about a movie everyone needs to see?
Oh, everybody. You know what? I just watched it, and I would definitely say the Iron Claw.
Yeah, I want to watch it. It just appeared. I didn't know if it was going to be Iron Claw or I was going to wonder if you said Fighting with My Family. I thought that was a good one too.
You know what? That is a good one, and I love her backstory. She's actually one of my favorite wrestlers too. So
I watched it on a plane because I was like, oh, what am I going to watch? Oh, I'll watch this movie about some wrestler woman. And I was like, whoa, this was pretty good, man. It was a good story.
yeah.
So, all right, cross-country road trip. Who is your celebrity co-pilot, living or dead?
Oh, geez. Oh, this is a tough one. You know what? Jim Morrison.
Oh, all right. See, I thought you were going to stay on brand, and I figured you'd just say like The Undertaker. Like, I'm going with The Undertaker, but Jim Morrison is.
I mean, if I wanted to, I mean, yeah, Jim Morrison, just because of the conversations that would probably happen. But if I wanted to go, party hard, it would probably be The Undertaker.
I'll stick with Jim Morrison though. I like that one better. No one's picked him yet, and that would be a car ride, I would imagine. Do you make your bed every day?
Yeah, I do.
Nice. What about a book everybody needs to read?
Ooh, not much of a book reader, but I would go with anything from the Dexter series.
Okay. Huh. I didn't think no one's ever said that one, so there you go. I like it. What are you taking, highways or back roads?
Oh, highways. Get there fast. You're going to hit traffic anyway, so you're not really saving any time.
Give me a bucket list place to visit.
Oh, a bucket list to visit. Oh, I want to go to Fiji
Nice.
or Bora Bora, one of those two places, just because I'm a beach dude.
They're on my list for sure. Okay, which one are you more interested in? Football or football?
Oh. When my friends hear this, they're gonna hurt me for this. But you know what? Football.
There you go, man. Ted Lasso, the Lasso way. Like,
that's right.
Why not? Do you watch Welcome to Wrexham? Being we're kind of.
I do. Yeah.
I mean, I love the show. It's literally Ted Lasso in real life, and I honestly think, as much as you say reality TV is scripted or all these things, I actually think Rob and Ryan are doing it all for the right reasons. And are really into it. So.
Yeah, I mean, they want to keep that tradition of Wrexham and Wrexham. They generally want to keep that club there. So,
it's a cool like addition. Like when it was like Ted Lasso ended, Wrexham kind of started, and they're like, all right, I can keep Ted Lassoing with these guys, sort of.
I'm kind of guilty, and I'm going to admit this out loud. I haven't finished Ted Lasso because I this is how I get it when I really like a show. I don't want it to end, so I drag it out as much as I can. So
I'm on I don't know, full seasons. I think I've watched it 4 times, and now I just pick episodes, and I'm just like, I'm watching this one today. I wonder what am I going to pick up today, here and there. So, all right, last question: the best advice you could give to your younger self.
Don't sweat the small stuff,
Love it.
And you back when I was a younger person, coming into my teens, the world was my oyster, essentially, and I always worried about what the small thing was. What's everybody gonna think if I choose to do this? What is my family gonna think? They're gonna judge me. But as I'm now older, and I've told my family, hey, I'm a career firefighter. I'm dabbling in pro wrestling, and my family's like, whatever makes you happy.
It's so hard to see that. It's so hard to see that when you're younger, right? And I'm trying to teach my boys that, like, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't worry about what other people think. Do what makes you happy. Again, going to the Renaissance Fair. All those folks are very happy.
They are living their best life.
100%, bro. And I love every minute of that. And then they walk by and they say fairly well or all these crazy things that we don't normally say in life, but they're just happy when you talk to them, when you interact with them, and they're playing their character. And it was such a fun time where I'm like, we need to do this again. Like, this was a good time. The
greatest thing, and my girlfriend is not into wrestling at all. In one weekend, I brought her to a local show and a WWE show, and she had more fun at the local show because she had fun watching the people. There was Mima sitting in the front row just heckling. It was awesome.
Oh my God!
But they were living their best life. That Mima was just there. She paid $10 to watch grown ass men in tights and just put their bodies on the line, and I thought that was just hilarious.
I love it, man. What a great way to end the show too. Just live your best life, right?
Yeah.
I think if we can all live our lives that way, whatever that may be for you, and you get the most enjoyment out of what you do, it's just going to make for a better day and a better tomorrow for sure.
Yep. What does Ted always say?
Coming on the show, man. I'm glad we put this together finally. It's been a little bit of back and forth for sure, but we finally made it happen. So I wish you all the luck in your budding return, and I'm excited to kind of follow it. So
yeah.
Awesome,
I was terrible with social media. Like I hate putting myself out there, being the center of attention, and I like being the dude in the second row, and nobody really pays attention to the people in the second row. It's the first row, and I like
here you are. Here we both are, because I kind of like being in the second row too, even though I'm always seem to be in the front row no matter what I do. So it's just a matter of, people don't believe that either. When I'm like, it's a challenge. Like it is definitely hard. Like this. It seems like it comes natural to me, and it does feel natural, but deep down inside, I'm still like, I don't know, what are people thinking? And following my own advice is hardest.
Like last night, I we were texting back and forth, and I was like, okay, I'm a little nervous because it's been a while since I've done one of these, and and now it's going to be out there in the ether where every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to be able to listen to it, and it's like, oh God. Stay on task. I had a little notepad behind the computer. Stay on task, because I can just veer off.
I feel you, man. I feel you. I know how it goes, man. Well, listen, this has been a great time. I can't appreciate it enough, man. I hope to have you back soon. As always, thanks to everybody for listening, everybody out there for supporting the show. Let me know what it is you do off the job. Reach out on social media, and we'll get you on the show too, because you just never know who you're going to inspire or who's going to have the same story as you. So for the Size Up by National Fire Radio, this is Pip. And remember, what you do off the job matters.
National Fire Radio.